Speak in supporting this bill is Lance Binoniemi from MITA. Lance, do you want to come up and say a few words?
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak before you. My name is Lance Binoniemi. I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association, more commonly known as MITA. I'm here in strong support of the legislation in front of you today that will increase road funding by $3.1 billion annually. We believe that this is a huge step in the right direction in improving the quality of our roads and limiting the deterioration of them. And gets us much more closer to that 90% good and fair condition that the state has tried to achieve for decades now. Every study suggests that we need at least $3.9 billion annually for our roads and bridges to get to that 90% good and fair condition. As Representative Coons and others have mentioned, we do come up to a revenue cliff starting in 2026. We have seen short-term investments over the past 5 years through a bonding program and through increased investments through Congress that all run out in 2026. And as we approach that funding cliff, we appreciate this opportunity to look at how we can increase revenues for our system. Some key components that were already mentioned earlier, but I want to make sure that we pay attention to because they are very important. We think that the funding problem or the policy problem that we have with sales tax on our motor fuel is the largest one we have in this debate. And these bills fix that to make sure what 82% of Michiganders want is that every tax dollar that we put into our pump goes back into maintaining our roads and bridges. Our public expects that, and these bills fix that. I think a lot of discussion has been on the local emphasis as well on these bills. As we've had these short-term investments, and it's already been mentioned, those investments have gone into our highway system. And so as the motoring public has been diverted away from construction zones to create a safety environment, they have traveled on those local roads and have beat up on those local roads without any increased investments over the past few years. So we're very encouraged that these bills actually put more emphasis on that local system as they're needed the most at this point. I'm here to tell you that the industry stands ready and willing and able to perform the work that is necessary for our infrastructure. As Representative Coons mentioned earlier, we have already had that ramp up in short term. And as that funding cliff goes, this extra $3.1 billion is just adding a little bit more to where we've been over the last 5 years. Our members have ramped up significantly in their workforce and in their equipment purchases, in their sophistication to make sure that they can handle this work. There have been several examples that Director Weifrich used earlier of influxes of money that Michigan has received. The contracting community has overperformed each and every time. We stand willing to do that again today. I'd be happy to answer any questions on costs or the ability for the industry, anything that you have, Mr. Chairman, or members.
Members, do we have any questions for Lance?
You guys are easy.
One quick question for me, Lance, and you've already touched on this, but I just, again, and I expressed this a little bit in my testimony as well, can we ensure that project costs remain reasonable, with this influx of money coming in? I don't want to see projects go up an automatic 40% just because we dumped $3.1 billion into our transportation fund. Can you walk us through that just a little bit?
Yeah, we certainly can't guarantee anything. I can't predict the global market and how things are going to react in the next several years, but I can say that construction costs have increased significantly over the past 5 to 10 years. We've already seen those increase in costs. We're not adding a ton of more material here. As I said, we are avoiding a funding cliff and only adding an additional about $1 billion. Our members have already ramped up to make sure that they can handle that amount of work. And so we don't see where costs would increase all that much.
Can you tell us what the cost would be if we didn't act now?
Yeah, certainly. That's a great point, and thank you. The cost of doing nothing and having our system continue to deteriorate far exceeds the cost of what inflation would be.
what would happen to the employees if you guys ramp down? Would they go to other states to work on construction
Yeah,
projects
so
there?
yeah, absolutely. So, and that's the biggest concern, and I think last week when I testified, that was some of the urgency that I had, is that our members' biggest concern is losing their employees. They've invested a lot of time and money and resources into their employees, and we're talking about a lot of families in Michigan. These are highly skilled, highly paid jobs that, if lost, these individuals and their families are not going to look for work in other industries. They are going to look for work in the same industry in other states where they are properly investing in their infrastructure.
Thank you for that response. And my big fear is that if we don't act now, the cost of what we'd have to do would far exceed what we're doing now. We'll move on real quick to a question from Representative Bruck.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lance, for being here. Appreciate your input on these bills. My question kind of refers to an earlier question. With your organization, your members, when there's these barriers, say in a county, it was brought up earlier, there's townships, there's these lines that are drawn. How does your organization work to try, is there something you can do to try to transcend those lines to get a more value-added project done versus cutting off at those township or those municipality lines?
Yeah, our members certainly work with local jurisdictions to make sure that they're doing things as most efficiently and effectively as possible. Some of those areas you just can't really work through, as some counties, as mentioned earlier, don't really speak to other counties that are next to them. But we work as a contracting community as much as we can, working with the agencies and the owners of the infrastructure to make sure we're doing everything we can possibly do. And something to mention, in the 2015 package, there were requirements to set up the Michigan Infrastructure Council and also requirements on local units of government to communicate with each other on their assets to make sure they are coordinating. It's early, right? That was 2015, but communities are moving in that direction, and I think utilizing asset management to make sure that they are doing the proper fixes at the right time.